Let's begin with Pakistan's worsening security situation. It has now become the second most terrorism affected country in the world. Dr. Sen Gupta, what are the key factors driving this surge in terrorist activity? And how has the state's response measured up?
I think Pakistan's own internal politics, internal policies have contributed a lot to these its dubious position. Also, the fact that from time to time it allowed itself to be the cat's paw for sometimes American policies against the Soviet Union that I think completed this mess. So, if you look at Balochistan, Balochistan is entirely domestically created, and it's been a policy of deceit. Initially, it is not known that Muhammad Ali Jinnah would argue for the ruler of Balochistan, actually the Khan of Kola, that this entity was actually independent. But when he became Governor General, he basically turned around. And secondly, given Balochistan's enormous resources, Pakistan has tried its utmost to crush any aspirations and to extract all its resources without investing anything in Balochistan. On the other hand, you have Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Initially, if you look at the polity of the Northwestern Frontier Post, as it was known by, it was a secular politics. In 1946, they voted in a Congress government. And this is the politics that the Pakistani government has been trying to change into a very communal politics. Firstly, for initial stability, and then secondly, as it started to foment jihad in Afghanistan against the Soviet occupation force, it also poisoned the politics of the Northwestern Frontier Post. And that is why, partly for domestic reasons and partly as a instrument of foreign policy, they undertook such politics, they undertook such measures that NWFP has become a hotbed of terrorism.
The Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan has emerged as a major security threat, with reports linking its growing influence to the Taliban's return in Afghanistan. How has the Taliban's rule strengthened the TTP, and to what extent is Kabul responsible for its resurgence in Pakistan?
Look, I mean, this is very ironic. After the fall of the Taliban in 2001 initially, Pakistan bided its time for a couple of years and then started to encourage the Taliban wholeheartedly to come back. And let us face it, American short sightedness, foolishness was, they were complicit in this. And as a result of which, Taliban is able to make a comeback. There is no counter policy to ensure that the Afghan policy is finally able to take on the Taliban. And ultimately, Pakistan wins a great victory on the face of it, letting Taliban seize power and aided and abetted by the Americans. They thought that the Taliban would be forever grateful to them and they would get a tremendous strategic space. Strategic depth is something that the Pakistanis have been talking about. Literally realizing that the Taliban are loyal only to themselves. They took Pakistan's help, they're contemptuous of Pakistan. And the Taliban never ever have accepted the Durand line as the de facto or the de jure border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. The only government in Afghanistan that agreed to that particular border was Najibullah's government, in the PDP government in 1987, which Pakistan and Americans brought down. And this government, which they helped to install, have played Pashtun politics. They have said we don't recognize this particular border at all, and they have played host to the TTP. After all, when the Afghan Taliban is concerned, there is no difference between them and the TTP. You may call it Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, but they are Pashtuns and they have helped their Pashtun brethren to do whatever they want because in their minds they're absolutely clear that the Northwestern Frontier Post was and shall be a part of Afghanistan.
Despite several counterterrorism operations, Pakistan has been unable to root out militancy. Some experts argue that the state's selective approach, cracking down on certain groups while tolerating others for strategic purposes, has contributed to this failure. Would you agree with this assessment?
Look, Pakistan, there are two strategies Pakistan adopts. One is a strategy which is not counter-terrorism, it is absolutely murder and genocide. In 1973, aided and abetted by the Shah of Iran, who supplied air power, the Pakistani army crushed, killed entire villages. You see, when you kill everybody, then obviously you have to succeed. And that's what Pakistan did in the early 70s. Counter strategy, as Pakistan knows it, is basically to try and buy people up. Okay. Now, in Balochistan, the disadvantage is the terrain, vast land. The advantages is a relatively very small population. Of the provinces, Balochistan's population actually is the lowest. And that is one disadvantage that Balochis have in their fight against the Pakistani state. So, what it does in the Balochistan is basically to kill, indiscriminately kill, and I fear for the Balochis it will happen again. I mean, killing Nawab Bukti, which Musharraf did when he was president, was actually not required. But they killed to send a message. They will basically, I think, hold some massive massacres in some Baloch villages to send a signal to the population, secure in the knowledge that the world will not criticize them.
Finally, Pakistan's economic woes continue to mount, and with a rise in terrorism, foreign investors and allies may start pulling away. How do you see this trend affecting Pakistan's economic stability, and what steps, if any, can the government take to restore confidence?
I mean, there are two aspects to it. One is when you talk about foreign investment, largely Pakistan was looking at Belt and Road initiatives, investment by the Chinese in Pakistan. Pakistan now has come to realize that this particular investment actually comes with a very high tag. The returns from this investment will never be enough to pay the interest rate on this loan, far less the principal. On the other hand, the Chinese are also coming to realize that they are being specifically targeted. And this is something that the Baloch Liberation Army has made it very clear that the Chinese with the Pakistanis are an occupying power and they will target the Chinese combatants. Once Chinese nationals are targeted for assassination and Chinese assets are targeted for sabotage, I think the Chinese will also start to do a rethink. They will probably realize that it is not worth investing in this particular place because whatever they invest in, roads, railways, can be easily sabotaged.
This was an insightful discussion, Dr. Sen Gupta. Thank you for your time and expertise.